My Little Pony is a world full of ponies of many kinds. They live in fancy big cities, towns or in villages. But what would happen if all of this disappeared and there would be just empty space, like the sea, forest or just a cold, darker surface? Ponies will have 5 things, regardless to their skills, which will help them to survive. Welcome to my new experiment. We will look at our main 6 protagonists and we'll compare their abilities to survive in different places and decide who would have the best chance of surviving. Now I'll explain the rules of this experiment. In this series I show 5 different places such as sea, desert, winter, forest and mountains, and as I said, we compare the ability of each member of the main 6 so we can decide who would have the best chance of surviving in each of these different places. If you have any other ideas, don't be shy and write them in the comments. Thanks. Before we started, we noticed that 97% of people don't subscribe to our channel, so hit subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss new video. Also, I would really appreciate if this video hits 100 likes. First, we are going to talk about the sea, and our first pony to try this experiment on is Twilight Sparkle. The sea is really dangerous, but Twilight Sparkle is a really clever pony, so we'll see what she can do. Imagine that Twilight appeared on the wooden boat in the middle of the sea. We will go with the fact that none of the ponies can use their wings, so they can't just freely fly away. We will try this experiment just with their character and abilities. As I said, Twilight is a really clever pony, so first of all, she would grab and open one of her guidelines books about surviving. There would be lots of useful tricks and advices on how to build a shelter or how to make a fishing rod. Right now it looks like Twilight Sparkle has the best possibility to survive, but what about her psychic abilities? Twilight can use her magic, so it would be much easier. But there are not many things that she could eat or drink. Of course, she can catch a fish, but that's not that easy, and about water? Well, I'm not sure that you can boil the seawater and then drink it. But I believe that Twilight would have some rope and that she could make her own sail to get on the nearest island. She would find something to eat and drink and then she would use her pergaments to start a fire. She could also use that book to start a fire, but I guess that would be the last option. The other thing that Twilight Sparkle is good at, and it could be really useful in this situation, are maps. I mean, she has a really good sense of orientation, so if she would be able to make her own map, she could know where she is. So that gives Twilight Sparkle a 75% chance of surviving. Why just 75%? I will explain. Twilight is not physically strong, and she is using her magic to do so many things. If she didn't need to use her magic, her chance of surviving could go up for 10%, but right now I can't give her more than 75. Also, to give a pony 100% chance of surviving, they have to be physically strong. They can't use magic and they must be sure of themselves. Another pony who I'll talk about is Applejack. She is a pony who works on a farm. She's strong and she's doing all of the work by herself. But there is one important question. Can she survive on the sea when she has never seen it in life? Because she's a farm pony who is doing all her work by herself, she would, just as Twilight, make shelter for herself from a barrel or from a wooden box. But she would use just her strengths to make it, unlike Twilight, who would use magic. Also, because she's strong, it would be no problem for her to catch a fish using a wooden spear. She could also make a paddle and try to get to the nearest island with it. I believe she could break a coconut with her legs, because as I mentioned before, she's a really strong pony. So I'll give her a 95% chance of surviving. I can't give her 100% because, as I said, she never seen the sea, so I don't know how she would feel about it. So right now we talk about 2 ponies. Twilight, who has a 75% chance of surviving, and AJ, who has a fantastic 95% chance of surviving. Could someone be better? We have 4 more ponies to go, so soon we'll see. Third pony is a Rarity, who is a fashionable pony who is making her own dresses. If she appeared in the middle of the sea, would she be able to survive? I definitely think no. Rarity don't know how to make a shelter, and I believe she would not be able to make one. We also know that she really dislikes anything dirty, especially mud. But I need to say that in the episode Winter Wrap-Up, she was making birds' nests, so it's not that bad with her. But I'm not sure if it would be useful in that situation, and I don't think that she would make her own shelter or fish room, so there would be no chance for her to catch a fish. I'm not sure if I can find a single ability in Rarity that could help her to survive in the middle of the sea. The only thing she could do is make an umbrella that would save her from the really hot days or from the rain. I'll give her 5%, maybe 10%, because if something like this happened, she would do that. Such a drama queen. Fourth pony today to try this experiment on is Fluttershy. Could she survive in the middle of the sea? Because she can talk to animals, there is a chance that they could help her, but I'm not 100% sure that it would happen. But if that happens, she has a better chance of surviving than a Rarity. She could ask sea creatures if they can give her some food or help her to get on the island. But I don't think she would be able to make a shelter, and I don't think the animal would make it either. But she would have it much easier with the help of the animals. She maybe doesn't need to make a shelter for her, she could just find a cave and live in it for a while. Because of this, I give her a 50% chance of surviving. Next pony, the fifth, is a Pinkie Pie. With her, I was thinking, Pinkie Pie is just chaos. Everything impossible is possible with her. But could she survive in the middle of the sea? There is a high chance that Pinkie could make or cook her own food. She could be able to find some food. But there is a problem when it comes to making shelter or a spear. I'm not even sure if she could get to the island, maybe in some mysterious ways, but that's all. I'll give her just 30% because she could not make anything. She's not strong and she is made to make people laugh, which is not useful in a situation like this. So we talk about 5 ponies. Twilight with a 75% chance of surviving, AJ with an amazing 95% chance of surviving, Rarity with the lowest ranking, a 10% chance of surviving, Fluttershy with a 50% chance of surviving because she can talk to animals, and Pinkie Pie with a 30% chance of surviving, which was a really difficult decision, but in the end I gave her the score. But we have one last pony, and that is a Rainbow Dash. Can Rainbow Dash beat Applejack? We'll see. Rainbow Dash is strong and brave, but can she survive in the middle of the sea without her wings? I think she can. She's on the same level as AJ, but a little bit different. First of all, I'm sure that she would be able to get the island somehow. Then it would be not a problem for her to make her own shelter, get some food, and I believe she would be able to make her own weapon so she could hunt animals to have food. But the problem would start in the beginning. She is not that skillful as Applejack, so it would be harder for her to get to the island. Also, she doesn't have a rope just like AJ, so she would not be able to make a fishing rod. So in the end, I give Rainbow Dash a 85% chance of surviving. So it's clear. Applejack is the winner of our first experiment. And that's simply because she is working on a farm, which makes her strong and skillful. If you like this type of videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to this channel. Also, don't forget to ring the bell so you won't miss new video. Thank you for watching.